So hello again, Rabbi,
Morning, Joe.
and welcome Roy again to our ongoing discussion about firearms and firearm violence and the concern that everybody has in this country right now about what to do about all this. And in our last discussion, we were talking about the weapon versus the person and what is needed in order to help fix, for lack of a better word, the problem with firearm violence. And you guys are saying that we should look at training as opposed to regulation as a way to deal with the situation.
Well, that's a little misleading because the training leads to being able to purchase the firearm. So we're not talking about wholesale or anybody. The perfect example is the automobile and the horseless carriage. And when it was invented, anybody could, and the Wright brothers, they were bicyclist people. They made a flying machine. So anybody could fly, anybody could drive a car. And as time went on, we realized that's not a good idea without some training. Imagine what it was like before traffic lights. Even if you had a police officer with flags, everyone realized you can't just have anybody operating any of these objects. And so what Roy and I are saying is not just anybody should have access to or be able to purchase a firearm. And I think the automobile airplane is a really good analogy. However, we don't have to be draconian and then come back to something in the middle. Why don't we start with a middle position? So, Roy, what do you think would be reasonable for what training should I get or need before purchasing?
Right. So based on, I've been around firearms most of my life. I am a firearms instructor, so I have a lot of experience with people from all walks of life and out on the range with them. So again, with that, I don't want to burden the Second Amendment greatly, and a lot of firearm organizations would disagree with my point of view. But I believe that if you're a first-time purchaser of a firearm, there should be some training without a significant financial burden to the individual. And I'm talking 4 hours potentially. So that would just, the 4-hour training would just give you the basic firearm operations, safety, your responsibility to own that firearm. I don't think that's an unreasonable step to allowing somebody to have a firearm.
Okay, so isn't that like the HQL here in Maryland, handgun qualification license? In order to purchase, you have to, how long is that course? How many hours is that?
So that course is 4 hours, but it is it's probably going to end up in front of the Supreme Court. I think Maryland shall issue MSI is I don't know where they are with it right now, but there are lawsuits against it because this basic one does overburden the citizens. So if you're not a when you think about buying a firearm for protection, so you're a family that lives in a crime-ridden section, wherever it might be. So 4-hour safety is, in my mind, reasonable to get an individual just to know the firearm and understand the safety, understand the responsibility that person is undertaking. As far as the next step, as far as personal protection outside the home, different organizations, I can tell you the NRA has a 16-hour basic course, stuff like that. But again, would be
so that would be to carry, to take your gun outside your home.
Correct.
So I'm thinking of a learner's permit. Driving, you get a learner's permit, then you get your license. And I'm thinking this is sort of what you're talking about. The safety training would be like a learner's permit. So now I can keep a gun in my home. If, however, I want to go anywhere with it, like I want to be able to drive the car on the street, just because I have a learner's permit doesn't mean I have to get a driver's license. I can just have a learner's permit, right? So this is 2 stages. Then the second would be a course about responsibility and, well, what would it include? What would I need to carry outside?
Well, you would need to understand your state's legal responsibility for carrying that. Everything from, when you can use a firearm, when you cannot use a firearm. So, you get some people out there who don't even have a clue and they just bought it. We're talking different societies here too. A good part of the United States, especially the midsection and other states, that hunting is a big thing, and parents teach their kids from an early age proper firearm safety, so on. But I think you have other areas that and we've seen the explosion now, that so many people bought firearms that have no idea. They just got concerned because of safety issues or potential inability to buy a firearm. And from my armorers that I know, people were coming in, they had no idea what they were purchasing. They had no idea about a firearm. They were just trying to get it.
But Rabbi, to point out, as I feel I must, my daughter did not buy our car. I bought it. And now I'm teaching her how to drive, and I might be a lousy teacher. And the only thing that I could be worse at probably would be firearm instructor. And I could go and buy a gun today. Well, I could theoretically buy a gun, and in a couple of days I would have a gun. And I don't think I'm not aware, at least in the state of Virginia, if I had to complete any training requirements in order to purchase it. And then I would attempt to teach my child or my spouse how to use it. And there's no control in that anywhere.
No, but there would be control if you have to take a 4-hour class. So you have some concepts of safety, which end of the gun the bullet comes out, how to secure it with a trigger lock, how to put it in a safe so that someone doesn't just grab it. So you've learned all of this. Now, your choice. Do you want to expose your child or not? And I think there is a limit to what we as a country, as a government, can go into your home. However, you as a responsible adult have to make those decisions. I think something else that Roy brought up is a real problem in our country, and that's that we always go for one size fits all. We have a very hard time with the idea that in the Great Plains, things are not the same as in DC. And to try to pass the same rules and regulations, even speed limits aren't the same all over the country. You can have different speed limits when you go west. There's nothing wrong with a state saying, because of our rural nature, because of what's going on, this is what will fit best. Still safety, and then still training outside the home. However, it can be tailored to the population. It can be tailored to the geography. It can be tailored to the economic situation of people. Yet the basic principle is still the same. In order to purchase a firearm, and I think it should be whether it's a long barrel, short barrel, or medium barrel, it's a firearm.
Right.
All firearms,
right.
All firearms, regardless, will require 4 hours of safety, or 3.5 hours, or 5 hours, whatever's decided. Okay, you get your safety training, then that gun stays home. If you want to take it somewhere, if you want to go hunting, you take a hunting safety class so that you don't endanger other hunters and you don't hurt yourself by whatever things you may do out of ignorance of knowing what a gun can do.
I never saw a hunting safety class where people were upset that they had to be there. The instructors normally did a very good job, stuff that was brought up that people didn't recognize, stuff like that. So, a 4-hour, I'm just talking reasonable stuff here. I mean, the federal government could come up with a reasonable online 4-hour course that would be standardized. I mean, we're asking people to give up 4 hours just to get consistency here. And then, your states could decide, if what might be required to carry that firearm. I mean, right now you have constitutional carry versus not, so or like Maryland may issue versus shall issue. There's so much there, so many other training. But again, I've seen there's got to be in my mind there should be a minimal safety course, and I think it should be standardized to a certain extent a 4-hour safety course. So even if you're that person out in Montana and you raise your kids, hey, let's watch this, let's do this, let's improve our safety. I can tell you though, this might be getting out of the discussion, we're focused. These things that we're talking about, the average citizen is not a safety risk. They really are not. So the gun deaths don't happen. As a matter of fact, there's information out there, studies that say a concealed carry, somebody who has a concealed carry permit is safer than law enforcement and actually prevents crimes more often than law enforcement. Law enforcement.
We can save that for
another topic
discussion, but that all stands. And so first is to purchase a gun. We use the existing system for background checks. Okay. All guns.
So they fix the NICS system. It's better. That's the first thing. Second thing is somehow you take a 4-hour safety course, or like you said, maybe the state's regulated and they say we just need to make sure people understand the safety and how to secure the firearm properly in their own home. It's a 2-hour course. Who knows?
Right. Then after that, if you want to go hunting or you want to carry a firearm outside, you take one of the courses for carrying outside a home or for hunting.
All right. Let me ask this question. You're talking about training, mandatory training. What about testing? I have taught far too many teenagers to know that they just sort of sit there, look at their phones and nod their head, and after 4 hours go out and do whatever they want. In the Netherlands, for example, to get your hunting license, you have to be able to identify a pregnant doe from a male deer at a certain distance and pass a shooting test where you can hit a grouping at a certain distance.
Well, I think we could do that with carrying outside, with hunting. I don't think that's unreasonable. It just would be a matter of making the test reasonable and not making the test so hard that no one could pass. And that I would see as a danger, because I've seen things like that before, that we create something so no one can qualify. But I don't think that's unreasonable, that you take a class for carrying outside, and then at the end of the class, you have to demonstrate, you know how to secure your weapon in its holster, you know how to shoot certain distances, and that you're shooting with a certain amount of accuracy. I don't think that's at all unreasonable to add to the outside. Inside your home, it's you and your family, and you as a responsible citizen or father. So I think we can separate those things out, because once you're in the home, it's yours.
One of my neighbors came back from South America and had bought his son one of those tourist trap bow and arrow sets with metal tips on the arrows. And he was shooting them over the playground into the hill on the other side. And certain kids were suggesting that maybe we could try and catch them, which is when I stepped in and stopped them. So reasonable parenting is something we could debate forever.
Okay, but part of what we're talking about is what you just said, is you interceded, would be some teaching. There's no way we're going to get 100% of everything. And if the goal is 100% of everything, there's no discussion. And I think that brings up a serious problem in our country, is the polarization. We have people on the no one should be allowed to, everybody should be allowed to. And if it's not my way, we can't have it. What Roy and I are bringing up is a middle of the road, a discussion. And yes, it may not catch everybody. There may be some father out there who leaves a loaded gun with a round in the chamber on the coffee table while they're drinking beer, and their 5-year-old walks in and shoots people. Right. And if we think that we're going to come up with something that'll stop everything, then there's no discussion. We have to do something reasonably and proper for the most numbers. rather than doing nothing, and rather than having extremes, that it only works if we ban everything, it only works if we allow everything. Neither of those work.
Right.
And that's what Roy and I are bringing here, is a middle reasonable position.
And I will not burden you or Roy with the question of who do you think is going to be more reasonable in adopting some of these changes, the one extreme or the other. I think that's probably a conversation for another time. But thank you, Rabbi. Your shots are all true. And thank you, Roy. And we shall have to do this again.